Say that with love.
We innovate safe spaces for Black children to be critical thinkers, be children without adultification, neurologically sound. Here, Black children build resilience in safe communities. They laugh and pretend and never imagine a world that doesn't see them as children. They only know our promise of protection. This manifestation of MBCDI's 8 essential outcomes for Black children to be and be abundantly.
Welcome to Say That with Love, a podcast where we reimagine Black childhood with legacy, liberation, and love. I'm your host, Dr. Leah Austin, the president and CEO of the National Black Child Development Institute. I'm also known as the president of the Black Children. Let it be known in this space, we love Black children, unapologetically and out loud. Today, we are exploring what it means for Black children to be truly seen as children and allow the space to grow, to play, to imagine, and to be vulnerable without being adultified or diminished. Joining me is Dr. Byron Young, a child and adolescent psychiatrist with the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health. He is a mental health advocate, consultant, and community psychiatrist, specializing in emotional wellness, social justice, and the arts. Dr. Young is the founder of Doing It Well, an emotional wellness project that provides resources to urban communities of color. He also leads the Cypher Sessions, a series of conversations using hip hop as a springboard to talk about mental health and wellness. Together, we will discuss how emotional wellness, culture, and justice intersect to affirm Black childhood and what it looks like to build systems of care rooted in love and possibility. Welcome to the show, Dr. Young.
Hey, Leah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Should I call you Miss Austin? What should I say?
You can call me Leah. That's fine. That is absolutely fine. No worries. That's fine. I am excited to have this conversation with you, excited for you to be on the show, and excited, quite frankly, for our audience to dig into this really important topic and really just understand more about what it means to see children as children, and in particular, the necessity to see Black children as children. So to start off, we use the term, I even said it in the intro, adultified or adultification. And not everyone completely understands what we mean by that. So I wonder if you would just kind of ground us when we say a Black child should not be adultified, that they should be seen as a child. What does that mean?
Yeah, so adultification is kind of this process of kind of projecting onto children kind of qualities, characteristics, and consequences of adulthood, right? So, when you think about kids, you think about innocence and purity and sweetness and those types of things. You give a sense of empathy. You give a sense of compassion for children. And this is the process of kind of removing that for kids, particularly for young Black kids. And it happens quickly, early. There's some data that says it can happen for young Black girls as early as 5, right? Talking about their bodies and their shapes and figures and that kind of thing. You see it for Black boys as early as 10, particularly the sweet spot seems to be like 10 to 14 years old. This notion that children don't get to be children. And so I think it's very much rooted in the dehumanization that you see Black people experience. And this is just like, at what point does that dehumanization start, right? And it starts very, very quickly. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you can see a Black baby and be like, ooh, cute Black baby, but somewhere real quickly, the kind of dehumanization just starts to creep in, and it happens so early, so quickly. And it's a real travesty.
Absolutely. There are a few points that you made that I want to dive even deeper into. But I want to zoom out for 1 second and ask you, you are a child and adolescent psychiatrist. So what first inspired you to go into this work? What inspired you to focus specifically on child and adolescent psychiatry?
Yeah, so I'm a proud New Orleans native from the West Bank of New Orleans. Cuckoo. And yeah, so I grew up as this very like odd kind of nerdy kid in a very hood context. My family makes up a big part of my community, so I kind of got to ride the street cred of my family, right? So that's Tarnik's little brother, that's Michael's cousin, that's June's cousin. And so I got to be my quirky, weird self in that hood context. But because I was so kind of odd, I think people, and I was kind of silly, kind of funny, I think people felt very comfortable opening up to me and talking to me, because I was the weird dude too. So people could talk about their weirdness, talk about their vulnerability with me. And so at a very early age, I was very intrigued by this notion of like, perspective, this notion of like what's going on in the internal worlds of people, and really, really intrigued by the notion of perspective in terms of, despite situation, still holding on to one's joy. My mom worked very hard to send me to private school when I was really young, so I would go from my very urban community to this really fancy private school. And when you're growing up Black and poor in America, I think you think if we had money, everything would be good. And I remember being very fascinated going to school with wealthy, predominantly white kids, and seeing that their joys weren't any more, their ice wasn't any colder. You know what I'm saying? Their joy wasn't any more robust than our joy. And I was just intrigued by perspective. And so I kind of took that to a very early was interested in psychiatry. I was also interested in pediatrics. And I think I always kind of consider myself a big kid, maybe had a little bit of Peter Pan syndrome, and just enjoyed childhood and that kind of thing. When I got to, I went to Xavier University, Louisiana for undergrad, #1 for placing African Americans in the med school. And so I knew I was going to be a physician. My mom was very big on, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you, baby. So I definitely had the confidence. And when I got to med school, I had an amazing experience after my first year doing this summer program, and it was between pediatrics and child psychiatry, and I chose child psychiatry and was just really blown away by the experience. And I think the thing about young people or working with young people, one, it's just more fun, right? You can kind of be a little more silly, a little more light, but also kids are more malleable, right? When you're younger, you're more malleable. It's the personality is still forming, the habits are still forming. So I just felt like it was a place where maybe you can make a little more impact a little easier. Not to say you can't make that impact in adults, but just a little more impact a little easier, and just to kind of have more fun, right? Like I could have a conversation with a kid while playing Uno or playing video games. You know what I'm saying? So just a more fun situation. And actually, I'm an adult psychiatrist too. In order to be a child psychiatrist, you do have to do adult psychiatry, general psychiatry. So I see adults too, but most of my patients are young adults and children. So from I actually saw a 4-year-old yesterday, up to like 23, my patients currently. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Wow. We'll talk about Uno later. You said so much, and there are few things that you said that I, in particular, want to hone in on. You used fun, the word fun, and childhood, and you said like children are fun, which they really are. Like I'll sometimes say like adults mess everything up. Children are just absolutely perfect and fun. And so I want to sort of pick up on this idea, this notion of children being fun and being allowed to be in this kind of fun stage. And when you're working with children, how do you see like adultification maybe showing up in their mental health? Like how it sort of impacts their mental health? How are you seeing that in the mental health space?
Yeah, that's such an interesting conversation. So the conversation, I think, is a two-part, right? One, this thing, regardless of race, I think becoming an adult, kind of growing up in this context, in this like kind of imperialist, social, kind of like capitalistic system, there are these rules and mores that kind of weigh upon you and kind of force you into a box that I don't think humans are all the way cut out for. So I think that's why you see as folks get older, like we see so much pain, so much sadness, so much like emptiness, I think, in our society, because this capitalistic system is very much rooted in a kind of exploitation, right? So you throw in the context of white supremacy, you throw in misogyny and homophobia, all these ideas, all these things of like all this stuff to kind of center wealthy white maleness. And if you don't fit in that box, you just gotta kind of contort yourself into that box, and that is unhealthy for all of us, even for white males. If I'm being honest, right? There's like one way to be human, this one way to be valuable is a very destructive thing, and so I think it weighs upon the mental health of all of us as we grow. And I think the reason why young kids look like they're having so much fun is because they haven't bought into it yet. And it's like once you buy into it, that's kind of where the dysphoria comes in. I was watching an interview and they were talking about going to the coast of like Ghana and Senegal and seeing kind of, there's like a freedom that those people have despite maybe being under-resourced or whatever. And I think some of that is because even though the capitalism has kind of reached us, most of us across the globe, it's different. It's not the hyper capitalism that we experience. And I think sometimes people get to hold on. So I don't even think that's necessarily, I think kids have a sense of joy that is human. And something about our systems like takes the humanity out of them. And I think that's why you see people in different cultural contexts still look like, we're like delighted, like, oh, look how happy, look how free, look how carefree. I think that's humanity. I don't think that's just for kids, but I think we have it at first and then something takes it away from. So I think that's one thing. And yeah, in the context of particularly for Black and brown kids, these biases that we like to pretend aren't real are real biases. And so you saw all types of rates of like, I was looking at some data about like, while Black kids make up only 15% of the K through 12 education in America, they make up 28% of the reason that police are called and 33% of the reason that kids have forensic involvement. Like what is that? And then and that's controlling for all the kind of variables. Black girls being suspended at twice the rate of their white peers. Like there's definitely something going on. And again, controlling for variables. This isn't, this isn't a pull yourself up by the bootstraps type of situation. This is real deal bias that we see in the systems. There's a really interesting study where they asked teachers to kind of, I don't know what they asked them to monitor, but what they were kind of tricking them, what they were really monitoring was their eyes. Oh, I think they were monitoring for like kid behavior or something like that. And the teachers, all the teachers, and this was across the board, ethnically, were honed in on the Black boy, right? Like for trouble, right? It's like what, but like, so of course, if you're looking for it, you're gonna find it, right? You know what I'm saying? You're looking for a reason. Data around like people misperceiving Black kids' facial expressions as anger, right? Like it's just like it's so deep, it's so anti-Black. Like our society is very anti-Black, and what this conversation really gets to is how does it start? Where does it start? And it starts that quickly. You know what I'm saying? And it's really, it's something we should be talking about more often.
Absolutely. Do you see in your practice examples, or maybe there's like a story you might share that illustrates, how not being affirmed or being adultified harms a child, or maybe even the opposite of how being seen as a child and being humanized and allowed to be a child is maybe showing up in a way that's really supporting a child. I just think sometimes giving people a story or an illustration or an example helps them to kind of understand.
Yeah. So I could tell this kind of original story that became a story that I saw constantly. But I remember when I was in training, I trained in New York. Shout out to Brooklyn Boo Boo. I remember, I was in training and there was this young African American boy. So I trained at Columbia Cornell. And so at Cornell is kind of more upper more financially resourced, predominantly white situation. Columbia more kind of like Black and brown, Afro-Latino up in the heights or whatever. And I remember there was a situation where a young Black boy had come in and everybody's kind of talking about like how, you get like a report from the therapist about the case and like how things are going and what's going on with the kid, and this notion that this kid wouldn't speak. He didn't want to speak. He was being, and so all this talk about like, oh, he thinks he's tough, he thinks he's whatever, like he thinks he's big and bad and that kind of thing. Little Black kid with locks, he would keep the locks over his face. And I remember like, man, like I was like, oh man, like how am I going to connect with this kid? And I remember, well, shoot, I'm gonna connect with him in the same way I would want to be connected with. So I started talking, instead of like talking to him about the pathology or the issues he was going through, I was like, yo, I saw you had an Odd Future t-shirt on. And I was like, oh, I love Odd Future. Like, man, I love your t-shirt, man. You in the Tyler, you in the Earl. And he lit up, you know what I'm saying? And a kid who wouldn't talk to anybody, literally, he started talking. So we had a good conversation about music and about culture and art. And once I built that rapport, once I connected with his humanity, we then had a conversation about, okay, thank you so much, man. I hear, you're having a hard time. Can we talk about that? So this notion of like how you connect with people's humanity gets you to open up, right? And so that's something I took with me to my work beyond that. Connecting with the humanity of my patients is super, super important. And regardless of the stories and the narratives or whatever, still a human, right? Like no matter what you did, no matter how, what the issue was, I want to connect with your humanity. And I think that's something that we need to do in medicine. We need more love in medicine. And if you love folks, you connect with their humanity. That's like part of what love is rooted in. To let somebody know, I see you. I see you. I know the issues. I know the struggles. I know, and I see you. I see you as a full human being, despite those issues. You know what I'm saying? I think in America we have this thing where if like people do something, particularly Black people, like it's like the rules are made to like control Black people, but kind of advantage white folks. Sometimes it feels that way. Like the laws protect white folks, but like are like shackles for black and brown and people of color. And so it's like, I see you as a human being who deserves to be treated as a human being, despite what these systems say. No, I disagree. Like, you're a full human, even, no matter what you did. It's like an unconditionality to the love, right? Like, I think that's what Black love is, right? Like, that Black love is this unconditional love that sees humanity in people despite the attempts to dehumanize. Like, that's what it is. That's our love tradition. So I think we need to, I think that Black love tradition is something we need to bring to medicine in general. We all need to eat on that. You know what I'm saying? Regardless of our background.
Absolutely. I mean, I love what you said about it's all rooted in love, right? And when you love a person, you love each other, you see all that there is to see about that person, good, bad, ugly, beautiful, all of it. And we have to be able to provide that same kind of love and centering to children, because they are, they're human beings first and foremost. And so they deserve all the love we can give them. As I listen to Dr. Young, I'm reminded that affirmation is not abstract. It is daily, it is lived, and it is essential. When Black children are treated as older than they are, when their innocence is denied, that harm reaches deep into their development. These are not isolated moments. They are patterns rooted in systems that fail to see Black children for who they are. And yet, Black practitioners, families, and communities are creating new patterns. They are world-building systems of care that affirm joy, nurture vulnerability, and center wellness as a form of justice. Affirmation is love in action. It is how we ensure Black children are seen, heard, and cared for, so they can flourish in dignity, wellness, and possibility. I want to talk a little bit about doing it well, and want to ask you, what role does emotional wellness play in a project like Doing It Well? What role does emotional wellness play really in affirming a child's humanity?
Yeah, I think the psyche is like the center of who we are, right? The psyche and the soul. And so this is doing that psyche work. This is doing the work on like how we feel about ourselves, how we love ourselves, how we're compassionate for ourselves. Those are my messages constantly: self-love, self-compassion. Because I think if you love yourself and you're compassionate with yourself, you can't help but pour that out to the people around you. You can't help but be compassionate and loving in terms of how you see people, how you connect with people. I always tell people, friends, family, and patients about like, you kind of know that your self-love is better when you're just being generally more loving, when you're being less critical, when you're being less judgmental, when you're being more like compassionate and empathetic, and like have this theory of mind, which is the ability to kind of take yourself out of your shoes and put yourself into someone else's shoes completely. Not like if I like, people, sometimes we have to struggle to see someone's perspective because we're not diminishing ourselves and putting ourselves in their situation, their context. And so I think that is definitely a piece of it. And so, yeah, I think Doing It Well is this project that's really to inspire critical thinking, and to inspire wellness, because I think that is the root of how we make the planet better, right? I think having critical discourse, there's a really great book by a thinker called Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire. And he talks about how in oppressive systems, you do this thing called banking education, where people in power decide what's important. You consume that knowledge, and then, I'll give you a star if you can regurgitate what I taught you, right? That is oppressive. That's like the people in power. So I say Christopher Columbus discovered America. If you can remember that fact, 1492, hey, pat you on the head and come work in my system. But to kind of in a liberatory system, it's not about that. It's about critical thinking, critical discourse, and about our collective kind of respect of each other's minds, and this notion of coming together to kind of tussle and think critically together and have discourse. And I think the Cypher sessions, particularly one of the programs I created, is really about creating a space for people to have that critical discourse. So you can be like, wait, did he discover America? Like, but there were already people here, right? Like, well, so how did he discover it? And like, what were the power? What was the whole mission set to be discovering, or was it set to exploit? And if they wanted to exploit, well, maybe the narrative that they might make them look like saints and everyone else look like sinners. But what happened when they got here? How did they treat them, and why did they treat them that way? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's this notion of like tussling with questions as opposed to just taking what is given. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, doing it well is really kind of to spark critical discourse around wellness, around social justice, around racial justice, and particularly using art as the springboard to do it. You see, I'm a big fan of like art and collecting and that kind of thing, but I love how art, and I see your beautiful piece behind you. I'm a big fan of how art is like this conduit that connects with a lot, because I think all of us have this artistic kind of creative sense. It's like part of our connection to God, really, that creation. And it's like, yeah, it's just a perfect springboard to make it universal, that everyone can connect with art as a way to open up and to be a springboard to think on who we are and how we are, and kind of get to those conversations more deeply.
Absolutely. So can you say a little bit more about how you integrate art, culture, and creativity into your approach?
Yeah, I have many methods. I will say one of the primary ones is using music. So this program I talk about called the Cypher Sessions, we use music and kind of deconstruct. So let's say we pick a topic, like let's talk about being Black in America. Let's talk about Black childhood. We would pick a song and a video to kind of deconstruct. We'd watch that together and then kind of deconstruct it in terms of how it relates to the topic, how it relates to us. So, you know, if we're talking about Black childhood in America, you know, you might pick like some old school, like Will Smith, Parents Just Don't Understand, you know, or so, you know, so I'll probably pick something more relevant. I'm really big on like nothing for us without us. So when I go to a group and do a cipher, I like try to sit with the people who I'm going to be ciphering with to kind of help them, have them help me create the cipher. So what's the music you're interested in? What kind of questions are you trying to ask? Right. So I think that's really important to not assume that I know, just because I'm a Black man from a hood context, that if I go to New York, I go to LA, I know all the hood context here. It's different. You know, we're not a monolith. So yeah, so just using music and deconstructing it to be a comfortable way to intrigue folks around a discussion, right? And another big part of it, I use the audience response system to ask questions. And instead of just me preaching or teaching at you, I'm trying to have discourse with you. This is my idea. What's your idea? What do you think about that? Let's build on each other's conversations. Let's ask each other questions. And yeah, so the art is really just the springboard to make folks feel comfortable, to make folks feel kind of interested in it. Because I think, yeah, that music is something that we all connect with. Sometimes I'll use like visual art representations, even, you know, dance pieces. Like, what did that make you feel? How does that connect to this topic? And the topics are myriad. We talk about all kinds of things. I've ciphered around almost every topic you could think of. It's really good. It's a good time.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a good time. You made me laugh when you said parents just don't understand. So totally dating myself. I remember when that song came out and my parents were literally like up in arms. Like, there are four of us in my family. They were like, you all cannot listen to this song. It's terrible. And of course, now, you know, looking back on it, I'm like, that song?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
of all the songs, that was the song that really had you upset. Right, right. Exactly. I do want to sort of talk about parents, though. And so, you know, as I mentioned, I'm a parent, know lots of parents. I think a lot about parents and parenting. And in particular, Black parents who are raising and parenting Black children, and how challenging it can be to buy into this idea, this notion of children being children. And so I just wonder what kind of conversations you're having with parents. How do you sort of talk through, for a parent who, for the most part, is maybe coming at adultification? That may not even be a term they're using, right? But they may be coming at it from a place of protection, right? Sometimes we hear, I have to prepare my Black boy for this tough world. Talk a little bit about how maybe you work with parents, how you're helping parents understand how important it is to affirm the child in our children.
For sure. I think for parents that I work with, I definitely try to do the similar thing of like, can we get curious? I want you to be curious about your child. I don't want you to assume that they did this for these nefarious reasons, or they did what I know why they did it. I know, you know what I'm saying? I want you to be curious. I want you to remain curious. I want you to be compassionate, right? I want you to give that kid compassion and empathy and kind of at least approach I'm big on like validation. So like even if you don't agree, you can hear the kid out enough to like hear their perspective, right? And so you can validate, I hear your perspective, and at the same time, this is my perspective. You know what I'm saying? Because there's something about when we invalidate, people's walls go up and nothing moves, right? And so I teach parents about the importance of like validating that your child has a perspective, has a mind. And again, it doesn't validation is an agreement. Validation is kind of, I heard you, I feel you, you coming from this point, you come from this angle, and at the same time, still, because a big part of a parenting is consistency and reliability and nurturing, right? And so you have to offer that, right? And sometimes the kid's perspective is outside of that realm, and you got to kind of still wrangle them in. But the notion of at least I heard you, I wanted to kind of connect with you in that way. And I think also there's this saying that's like everything is either rooted in love or fear. And I agree with you. You talked about parents being like, oh, I got to protect my Black kids because. Yeah. So making sure that in terms of how you're interacting with the kids, is this something rooted in love or is it rooted in fear, right? And so if even in the way that you prepare those kids, making sure that preparation isn't fear based, but it's love based. Like I'm doing this out of love, and like there are certain ways that love is going to have to look if it's really rooted in love. So love's going to have to look respectful. Love's going to have to look like a control of temper, control of anger. Love is going to have to look like a real connection, right? You have to be, like I said earlier, build that rapport, have that connection. And so one of the biggest things I see is parents are kind of operating out of fear and not out of the want to like connect with their kids out of love. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that those are things I talk to parents about a lot. Let me say one of the biggest things, the first step is taking care of your own emotional health. I have so many parents who literally run themselves ragged trying to provide, big on like, I need to provide. I'm trying to give my kids what I didn't have. But like one of the biggest things to give kids is that love and that nurturing. And they will prefer the time and the connection over the new Xbox, the new PlayStation, whatever. Like if you giving them an Xbox and a PlayStation is at the expense of your wellness and at the expense of your time with them, it's not worth it. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, so hopefully you have the option to give all that, but sometimes you can't. And so the connection and the love and the time is definitely the most important thing. But I really do harp on parents to like take care of yourself, make sure your cup is full. And it's one of those things that you hear people say, but are you doing it? So I consistently doing it. You told me you're going to get in some therapy. Have you done it? Every session. Have you done it? Like it's almost like it's their therapy a little bit. I'm checking on you. Are you doing the mindfulness meditations we talked about? Are you being present? Right? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you drinking water? Just like it's just basic. Are you getting sleep? You know what I'm saying? I feel like, particularly in the Black community, I think anxiety is at all time high, and folks think it's almost normal, like kind of seen as normal to just be up at night ruminating and worrying. That's not normal. We're not supposed to do that. And so this notion of like, yeah, we got our own emotional work to do, and I think one of the biggest things is helping parents making sure that they're taking care of themselves emotionally, because again, you can't pour from an empty cup, and if you're not healthy, you're not pouring good stuff. You know what I'm saying? You got to take care of yourself. So those are some of the things I teach. And I think when you are taking care of yourself better and emotionally, then you'll be less angry. You'll be less, it'll be more love based because you are kind of loving on yourself better and can pour out love better that way.
Absolutely. I feel seen. I feel like we totally just had a session. And I appreciate that because it is, the points you're making are so critical that as parents, we do feel like, and this part is out of love. We feel like, oh, I want to give you everything that maybe I did not have, or I want to sort of manage or balance. Maybe I travel. And so then I think I'm balancing that with when I'm home, I bring you things, or, we're trying to figure this all out. And then at the same time, thinking about, well, what does it mean for me to be well? And how does my wellness actually translate into how I'm parenting, but also how my child is even experiencing me as a full just person and human being? Like, what am I modeling for my child in terms of my own wellness and how I take care of myself?
That's so important because a lot of what you try to teach, the modeling is what they're really learning, right? That's what they're really going to take home, right? You could say all these things and do all these things, but they're watching you. How do you respond? How do you allow people to treat you? How do you allow your partner to treat? How do you and your partner communicate? How do you communicate with your friends? How do you communicate with your family? How you treat people out in the community? Like those are the things they're absorbing. You know what I'm saying? And so I think it's super important. How are you taking care of yourself? Like, you know what I'm saying? What are you allowing and not allowing? What are you kind of putting energy into and not putting energy into? The modeling is probably that's the thing that they're reading the most. And so it's so important. You hit it right on the head in terms of that modeling piece. That's super important. How are you taking care of your anxieties,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to zoom out a bit just to think about systemic barriers. And so what systemic barriers do you feel really like stand in the way of children being fully seen as children?
I think that racism and anti-blackness are so ingrained in American systems. I can't think of a system that doesn't stand in the way, right? The data points I gave earlier about like the rates of like the disparities in our school systems in terms of who gets suspended, who gets the police call, and again for the exact same offenses, exact same context. Are in medicine too. Who's getting restrained more? Black kids. Who's getting sometimes we use medication to in inpatient settings and in emergency room, they'll use medication to kind of chemically restrain Black kids. You know what I'm saying? Like in every context, in every system, this anti-blackness is a thing. And so when people were seeing, saying we're post-racial and like race is an issue and why is everything about race? It is so deeply rooted, anti-blackness is so deeply rooted in what America is propped up on, that there's not a system that we don't need to protect Black kids from. There's not a system that we don't need to prepare Black kids to kind of be a part of and to see their humanity of. That there's a concept in medicine called weathering, and it talks about the kind of weight of these things on us, but down to the genes, to the DNA, right? Like there are these things at the ends of our DNA called telomeres, which kind of protect our DNA and keep it strong. And this oppression weighs on the telomeres and shortens them. And so there's data to say that people who've experienced kind of racial tension and racial discrimination, and this is even if you recognize you experience it or not, right? So just Black folks in general, they have a shortening of their telomeres, which makes their DNA more susceptible for issues, which kind of explain why we have the higher rates of physical illness and ailments and diabetes and high blood pressure and cholesterol and all these things, the cancers and that kind of thing, because down to the genes we're affected by this. And so it's so, you hear about the cortisol levels and the, all stress and the chronic stress and how these things happen. It's really hard being Black in America for that reason. It's really a thing. It really is and it's not to say you can't rise above and you can't do well, but it's just because of this system, you're going to face these things again, because I have a lot of young kids. I do a lot of talks with kids, people of all ages, including kids. And if you ask some of these kids in this generation, they'll be like, oh, like they don't see race as an issue. Race doesn't affect me. But like, brother, we sitting in a school in an under-resourced part of town where your resources are limited. Your school system is not the best, right? You don't even know what you do. It's like you don't even know what you're missing because of race, right? Like the redlining and the gerrymandering and being left out of the GI Bill and being left out of the Great Deal. Like all these things have made this situation where we got it hard right now. That is race. We can't remove it from that, right? You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, it's like, man, it affects us at every turn. And so, like, we think about equity. Who needs to be loved on the most? It's these very unloved people, right? The people who, these systems have been on our backs since the beginning, literally. And, other than the 12 years of Reconstruction after, enslavement, it's just been hard. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I was talking to a friend about this yesterday. During Reconstruction, Black folks, they didn't let us read, write, whatever. But as soon as Reconstruction happened, folks were like becoming politicians and taking leadership positions. 12 years, we had 12 years of like, oh my God, like, and we did all that coming out. So imagine if you could remove some of the barriers of racism and anti-Blackness, what could be. But still, I think it's beautiful because Black people, despite all that oppression, despite all the kind of unfairness, still so loving. I say everything that tastes good about America, Black folks, everything that feels good about America is rooted in Black folks. What you listen to, what you eat, when you're around, the music that makes you feel good, the culture that makes you feel good, not to mention our brilliance, our inventions and that kind of thing. But like, when you think about the part of America that feels good, it's Black as hell.
I wanted to ask you, I want to go back to the term weathering. And the point you made about young people, or just say people probably younger than us, who maybe do express not, feeling like they're in a racist society, right? Or they're in a post-racial society. I'm just wondering do you see weathering in young, I'm familiar with the term specifically around like Black women and maternal health. I'm just wondering if you see weathering in terms of like with young people, and does that help maybe explain some of the higher rates of or increased rates of suicide and anxiety and depression that we're seeing in young people?
Yeah, so the weathering is a thing that happens over time. So I think what happens with young people, weathering is kind of where it starts. You're probably familiar with the research on ACEs, right? The adverse childhood experiences. And so the data shows that these having these particular experiences, which under-resourced Black folks are more likely to have, right? Because lack of resources and you get more stress and that kind of thing, then you're more likely to have this stuff affect you. So most of that stuff kind of affects you later on, right? Like your genes are kind of going through it while you're young. I think in terms of Black morbidity for kids, I think what's interesting is, right, so like white people's rates of suicide are way higher than Black people's, but you're right, we're kind of, it's like it's we're kind of the one of the faster growing ones, right? So still there's still a big disparity, but it's growing. And I think what I think is, I think and this is my theory, the advent of like social media has been a gift and a curse, right? Because before, right, like this is very interesting. Growing up where I grew up, so we're around family constantly, right? So my main influences as a kid are my family, including elders, right? Grandma, her brothers and sisters, grandpa, his brothers and sisters, all my aunts and uncles, and my many, coming in from the South, I got a million cousins. Shout out to my cousins. And so those are the influences. So you think about something like suicide, you hear your grandma and your elders say, "Oh, you can't commit suicide, baby, then you're gonna go to hell." Like like you're like, "Oh well, shit, that's not an option. That's off the table." I'm like, what I'm saying? You get these influences of like, oh, why that's not acceptable, or like, especially with Black elders, keep on keeping on. You're gonna be all right. Like you get that motivation, you get that nourishment, you get that, like, come get something to eat, right? Like you get this notion of like, whatever the hardship is, you've seen it be as hard as it could be, and folks still keep on keeping on. But I think now there's been kind of a disconnect from elders, right? And there's just so much more noise. So even if you are around your grandma, your grandpa, your cousins, your aunts and uncles, you might get that influence, but you got all these other influences. Right. And again, in a system that is capitalistic, that is white supremacist at its core, your influences, what you're feeding, it's just a dehumanizing system. Regardless of your race, this system dehumanizes, right? Are you pretty enough? Are you strong enough? Are you smart enough? Are you whatever? And if you're not, then you're less than. Buy this product. It'll make you feel better, right? You know what I'm saying? And it seeks to commodify humanity. That's not that's not nurturing. That's not healthy. And so if you think about it, Black people have been going through hell and high water since the beginning, yet still had lower rates of suicide. So there was something that was protecting us. And there were these protective factors that I believe are like family and spirituality and connection and that kind of thing. And now because of this influx that dilutes those protective factors, I'm kind of scared because I'm like, slowly, if we lose the connection, the protective factors, and we already got more stress, more risk, what's going to happen? So I'm really terrified. And there's actually was a data point about the rates of suicide for people who are 10 and under, which is horrific that there's even a rate of suicide for people under 10 and under. Absolutely. But the number one group was Black boys, which is they've never even been close to number one in any rates. This was not even close, but number one group was Black boys. And so you think about like, oh no, under 10. The notion and so where do the notion of a 10-year-old even learning how to do that is you get access to the computer to do it, right? But yeah, it's like now you got influences, you got so it's like it is a gift, right? We had the Black Lives Matter and the Arab Spring and all these things, people rising up, South America. But it also has to be controlled. And now we're talking about AI or whatever, same thing. I'm concerned. Like, I think it is the gift, but Lord knows it could be a curse. And it's complicated. It's complicated. But I think, those influences are kind of drowning out some of our protective factors. And that's why I think you see these rates on the rise. Because there's something really beautiful and delicious about the Black experience, but the Black experience is like not a thing that's just innate. It's something that you're cultured into. And if all this other cultural noise is drowning that out, you don't have those protective factors, but you damn sure still got the risk. You still got going to treat you. And that's scary to me. That's something I think about.
It is very scary. I think about it as well. I actually just came back from a convening on AI and education, and it was equal parts scary and equal parts interesting and very intriguing, like the challenges and the opportunities. I mean, we at NBCDI really talk about it as what do our children or who do our children have access to, and who or what has access to them? And those, right? So on one hand, it could be this very like opening, you learn so much about the globe. And on the other hand, it's all of this information that is being poured into our children, our young people, even ourselves as adults, but in particular, our young children who then don't necessarily have the tools to process or the protective factors, as you mentioned, to really help them balance what they're taking in with what is really real for them and core to their humanity. So appreciate you bringing up tech. So I want to ask you two closing questions. One, what gives you hope when you look at the Black children and families that you serve? What makes you feel hopeful?
Yeah. So much. I'm biased, right? I love Black people. I love Black humor.
Same
I love
here.
Black conversation. I love Black dynamics between parents and kids in terms of how they talk about each other. I'll tell you one funny story. I had I had a dad and a daughter, and the daughter was dressed very Mask of Sinner, right? And so initially the dad was like really struggling with his daughter, likely being in the queer community, or like being identifying as a lesbian. He was really struggling with it at first, but then he's like, okay, he's like, okay, I'm with it. I was fine. I love my baby this way, because we're talking about how, she's gonna need this nurturing, she's gonna need this support. Like the rates of things for folks in the queer community are really, it's a stressful situation. And so he was like, yeah, you're right. I'm gonna do it, whatever. And he's like, well, if she gonna dress like a man, she gonna dress like the Flyers, man. You better. And so so he's like, them Timbs better be crispy. You know what I'm saying? He's like, if you gonna wear Timbs, they're gonna be crispy Timbs. And he like, you gotta have the shirt press. So he really took like, if you want to dress more masculine, we gonna do it right. I'm gonna do it with you, baby. We gonna have you fly. You know what I'm saying? So he took this, like, he went from being very biased to being very like very deeply embedded in caring about how she presents her more masculine aesthetic. And I just like, that's the coolest thing ever. I just think the way Black people do it when we doing it right, it just don't get no better. We as my website doingitwell.org was in many ways the LL Cool J song, doing it well. Like wellness or whatever. We do it so well. Everything, you know what I'm saying? When we do it well, we do it the best, I think, you know what I'm saying? And I just love how Black people love on each other. I think that's one of the things, like, with the way we love on each other, even in things that aren't necessarily loving, like even in how we use language, how we use our bodies, how we are affectionate, like the loving on each other is the thing I love to see. And so, yeah, I mean, Black people inspire me constantly. I think, I literally do this thing where I'm like, reason 678 why I love Black people. Like, just some little reason 1095 why I love Black people. Like, just little bitty nuanced things. Like, I'm from New Orleans, so it's constant. Hey, baby, how you doing? What you need? Like that melt like butter. You know what I'm saying? Like, we having a cookout, baby. Come on over. Like, I don't even know these people. Come through. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just love it so much. I was talking how, like, my family, the very physical laughter, like my sister particularly, like, she'll laugh and she'll hit you and push you or whatever. Like, what the heck? Wait a minute. You know what I'm saying? But it's so dope. I think it's just such a dope thing.
I'm the same way. I'm like laughing and my hands, I'm like clenching them because I so badly want to like reach out.
Yeah. It's endless. It's the endless reservoir of beauty. And again, that's because I think Black love is so powerful. It had to rise above so much. So it's got to be strong. It's got to be palpable. You know what I'm saying? It's got to be palpable because of all this kind of had to endure, and it's still enduring, right?
Absolutely. Could not agree more. So I'm gonna challenge you to put on your Afrofuturist hat and take all of what you just said. If you could design the future, right? Like, we will forever need mental health systems. If you could design a future mental health system that is centered on affirming Black children, what would that look like?
Yeah, I think if I could design a mental health system, I think about this a lot, actually. I would integrate that system in the educational system, right? So it's always meet people where they're at, and where are kids? They're all in school. So I would connect that system with the educational system, and social emotional learning would be a part of it would be like, how people like, oh, you're doing math. Like, every grade you got math. Every grade you would have social emotional education. You'd have social emotional space, right? We would be doing mindfulness meditation. We would have like group therapy. We would be talking about feelings of compassion and self-love. Like, this would be a constant every year. It's just, as you go from K to 12, every year, this would be a part of your classwork. How do you identify feelings and emotions? How do you recognize when your feelings and emotions are causing issues? How do you kind of look inside more critically? How do you take away the sense of emptiness? How do you fill your cup, right? How do you handle anxiety? How do you handle stress? I'm talking, because some of the things I think that are beaten down on us, like these ideas around what it means to be, I got to be a Black man's got to look like this, or a Black woman's got to look like this. How do you undo that and allow people to be human beings, right? How do you, respect genders and sexualities and cultures, and how do you know what I'm saying, appreciate the beauty of Blackness and be aware, like, let's name these systems, let's name white supremacy, let's name anti-Blackness, and let's do something about how that's not cool, how like we're all created as divine individuals. And yeah, you know what I'm saying? And some of the, I would love to have some of my favorite thinkers in there. So we reading Bell Hooks All About Love. We reading Ta-Nehisi Coates. Ta-Nehisi Coates giving lectures on like reparations, and even if even reparations comes or not, the notion of why that's a thing, right? I want people to be very well versed in it. We're talking about critical race theory as an idea, right? Like, it's an idea there's no idea we shouldn't be able to discuss. What are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? We're talking about these things. We're talking about one of my favorite books by Bell Hooks is Ain't I a Woman? And this notion of like how much you learn about wellness when you can see someone else's stuff and you take it outside yourself. And that book kind of really highlights Black women's struggle in terms of, Black men and white women wasn't really checking for them, but here they are, this force in the world. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's something that everyone could learn from that. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I think about it all the time. So they will be part of the curriculum, will be kind of extracted from those things. The pedagogy of the oppressed. So let's talk about creating space for people to think critically and like why your mind matters and what how you like, let's remove ourselves from this notion of people being valued based on status or money or power. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do we kind of tussle with those types of ideas because really it would be coursework in kind of appreciating humanity. How do you dehumanize people? You know what I'm saying? And this coursework, I think everybody should be doing. You know what I'm saying? But like, I think Black love would be the root of the coursework. You know what I'm saying? Because it is this exemplary thing that is for us all to appreciate, right? I actually did a lecture at Boston Children's with the Harvard Child Psychiatry Program, and it was about Black love as this template for wellness, because Black love is this thing that not only did it rise above all the hate, right? It rised above something that said it wasn't even worth being a human, and still loved on each other, but it had enough love to love on everybody else, right? The Black people were taking care of the children of all cultures. Black people were the ones who kind of were creating and innovating. Black folks are the ones who, in the civil rights movement, we weren't just thinking about Black folks. The civil rights movement led to the 1965 Immigration Act, which allowed all people of color to come into the country. You know what I'm saying? Black folks, you think about people like Marsha P. Johnson in terms of like what she meant to the LGBTQ community. That wasn't just for Black queer people. That was for all queer people. You know what I'm saying? You think about Black Lives Matter. That wasn't just for Black folks, but they were talking about they were talking about women's rights. They were talking about trans rights and LGBTQ rights. They were talking, you know what I'm saying? So Black love has always been the Me Too movement of Black women, Tarana Burke. That wasn't for just Black women. That was for, you know what I'm saying? So Black love is so powerful that spills over. And if you let Black people love kind of freely, that love's gonna be good for everybody. Everybody eats. You know what I'm saying? And like, I think that's the kind of thing that we need. We need more of that. And so that course throughout K through 12 would be mandatory. Everybody's got to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, that would be my Afrofuturist idea.
Oh my goodness, that is beautiful and perfect in all the ways. I absolutely love Black love as a template for wellness. That's right here. I'm about to write that down. That's exactly it. Like, that is such a perfect note to end on. Just this understanding that Black love is a template for wellness, that this is not about the supremacy of any group. That's so far from our minds. When we say Black Lives Matter, it is not any of the things that people try to make it become. It is literally, we love each other and we want everybody to be liberated and free to love and live the lives that they want to live. So I thank you so much, Dr. Young, for joining me on Say That With Love. To be seen as a child is to be granted the right to joy, imagination, and vulnerability. It is to be free of adultification, meaning we don't see them as little men or women. We see them as children and we hold them in care. So I want to end by offering this invitation. If you are a parent, caregiver, or educator, reflect on how you affirm the children in your life as children, not as problems to be fixed or adults to be managed, but as little souls to be nurtured. If you are a policymaker or practitioner, ask what practices or systems you can change to center love, wellness, and affirmation. Explore NBCDI's Black Child Safety Framework at nbcdi.org to learn more about how safety and affirmation must go hand in hand. Every action matters. Every Black child deserves to be fully seen, affirmed, and allowed to flourish in love and possibility. Thank you to our guest, Dr. Byron Young, for his insights and his leadership. Say That with Love is a podcast from the National Black Child Development Institute. This episode was created with our ABF creative production team and our partners, and with love for the communities that inspire this work. And to Black children everywhere, we love you unapologetically and out loud. I'm Dr. Leah Austin, and thank you for listening.